The Pine&Oak podcast with Alon Pinkas and Amir Oren is being created at the Procast Studios in Tel Aviv. Procast is a leading podcast house dealing with commercial as well as public interest issues in Israel and in the region. Hi again, this is Pine&Oak, a podcast, usually with Alon Pinkas, who is away today, will be back shortly. I'm Amir Oren, and my guest is Reserve Brigadier-General Shmaya Avieli of the Israel Air Force. Hi, Shmaya.
Hi, hello.
You have been an Air Force senior officer, commanding 2 helicopter squadrons, 2 air bases, including the Palmachim Air Base, which is one of Israel's finest, housing the Commando Unit Shaldag and UAVs as well as helicopters. And in your last position in the defense establishment, you headed Sibat, which is basically the defense ministry's unit in charge of cooperating with the Israeli defense industry, promoting it and helping it to export its products. The Israeli defense industry is enjoying quite a good period now with the war in Ukraine, with our own war, with demand in the world for its unique products. Is that, while you're not an investment consultant, but is that a good time to look at the Israeli defense industry?
It's more global, I would say, since the world is in kind of a twist regarding security issues, what happened 3 years ago regarding Russia and Ukraine, and the attitude of the Europe countries, and they are doing it right now. They are put much more. And we can look at Germany, for example, that they changed the law after 76, 77 years.
Regarding the defense budget and procurement?
Regarding the defense budget, because they believe they need to be more stronger. And you can find it, and Europe is the rich world. And if they enlarge their budget in 5%, it's a big money. And I believe that the Israeli industries that coming and all their, let's say,
product list.
Not product list, but the maturity and the יצירתיות, the creativity comes from the demands that come from the IDF in each service, and they are well experienced, unfortunately, in the last 18 months. So they are going to see, I think, very good days regarding business.
But that could have also a negative impact with the Israeli Defense Forces buying an item which they don't really need, but they want to help their brethren in industry sell it abroad. And you must have this seal of good housekeeping that the IDF has proven it in battle in order to sell it.
It's not exactly like that, but for sure that if the IDF use the system, it's easier to each industry to sell abroad, but it's not unlikely to see something that comes without that the IDF chose to use it. It's easier, but it's part of the business.
We are used to American ambassadors coming to Israeli prime ministers or ministers of transportation in order to sell Boeing airliners rather than Airbus or some other competitor, non-American competitor. Obviously now under Trump it would be even more blatant. There will be quite a sales pitch. But Boeing does not compete with another corporation in commercial aviation, at least since it already merged with McDonnell Douglas. On the military side, it's Boeing against Lockheed, against others. The Israeli equivalent is that you have two giants here, Elbit and IAI, and you have others, Rafael, IWI, and several others. How do you, as an official, when you were in the capacity of basically the Deputy Director General for Sibat, how do you manage to maneuver between these competitors?
I always, almost always, that is said to the industries that they try to ask you for kind of a unique help, let's say, a unique enhancing, that the decider, the ones that decide, is the customer. That's it. It's very simple. Sometimes we had let's say a project that many Israeli industries was in, and the number one that organized one of the industry, he says, how can we choose?
The integrator.
The integrator, exactly. And so I said to him, give all the opportunities to the
subcontractors,
the buyers. It's not the sub,
right.
The buyer.
So it's a prime and subcontractors.
Yes. No, but the customer decides if it's industry X are doing, let's say, I don't know what, and the second industries are doing exactly the same. You will decide, not me.
But this is great in theory, but in the real world of business,
human
beings, there's a fierce competition. Not all of it above board, some of it under the table.
Absolutely.
And you, as a pilot, growing up in a very straight-laced system, find yourself having what? To close one eye to what is happening?
No, I don't think so. I didn't close my eyes, but I try to do my best to take decisions if it was mine. Let's say if it's one single producer, it's easy. If it's two or more, there is, as we spoke before, there are some parameters that influence the potential customer. For example, if IDF is using it, or is a system like that, so sometimes they would like a copy paste of the system. But if there is a kind of open to dialogue, you explain to the customer, you as an official, how do you see it, etc., etc. And at the end of the day, he should choose.
How will tensions with Iran impact the Israeli industry? If there is escalation, a conflict, we had two operations last year in 2024, in April and October, and especially in the second one, the Israeli Air Force, along with other parts of the Israeli defense establishment, has shown its capability, in this case, to peel off the Iranian array of surface-to-air missiles and defense. Does that have an impact when others abroad look at the Israeli products and tell themselves, hey, these guys know that we can get a good product from them?
It's not an easy question, or it's not an easy answer. The question is clear. I believe not many countries needs those capabilities, but I believe that what we performed in those two occasions in April and October 2024 showed to the world or many countries that we have abilities that are, let's say, appreciated.
What was your particular road from your village to this position of Sibat chief? You joined the Air Force as a cadet and then did what?
I joined the Air Force in 1980 as a young soldier. I finished flight academy in November 81. Actually, in 79, I joined the flight academy, and November 81. And then I flew on a Cobra H-1S as a young pilot.
A helicopter.
Armed
helicopter.
Attack helicopter pilot. And I was an instructor pilot as a young pilot in the flight academy between 83 to 85, I believe. Then I became a second deputy squadron, first deputy squadron in two different. And in 94, after 1 year in the headquarters, in the operation section, I get my first commanding on a Apache
Squadron.
On a Cobra squadron for 2 years, and 2 years in as Apache squadron.
So hold on for a second. In the U.S. Armed Forces, helicopters are in Army aviation.
Attack helicopters.
When the Air Force had its independence from the Army, it started as the Army Air Corps, and then it got its independence in 1947. Helicopters, as well as air defense artillery, stayed with the Army. But as you know, in the Army, some pilots only fly. They become warrant officers and finally chief warrant officers, 1 to 5. And they don't want to command. They don't want to manage. They want to put in the 20 years of flying and leave. Is it better? Is it better for them? Is the Israeli system better for us?
It looks like that our system is good for us, and their system is good for them. Let's say in the U.S. Air Force, there is no such a thing. They are all officers like us. I believe, I was grow like that, and it's my nature. So but I was about 10 weeks in Apache orientation course, and my
Where in the States?
In the States, in Fort Rucker, Alabama, in the Army, and my instructor pilot was not an officer, and he was very good instructor.
But this is all he has done for his entire service, flying and instructing.
Flying and instructing, and flying operationally, some maybe, and yes, but it works. For them, it's good.
But it takes one type of person to be very proficient in the art of flying, and another type to be both that and managing or commanding.
Yes, but also in the Israeli Air Force, not all pilots are in commanding post. Now, in recent years, about 20 years, that we have what is called professional pilot in each, at least, fleet. But most probably now it's more than that. In each squad, I don't know if it's in each squadron, but it's more common.
Captains or majors?
Yes, and sometimes lieutenant colonel if he.
This is what he is doing until he retires.
Yes. And it's good because there is someone that is holding all the know-how about many things, and it's good.
Now, you, after commanding 2 air bases, one of which was built by the U.S. Corps of Engineers as part of the Egyptian-Israeli Defense Treaty, and as
Peace
Treaty, the defense annex to the Peace Treaty. And as you know, being later a salesman for Israel, the Egyptian-Israeli peace accord is probably the only one in the world where the mediators, the United States, paid a commission to the parties in order to...
Still pay.
Right, billions of dollars a year. But part of the original down payment was building air bases for the Israeli Air Force in order to move from those in the Sinai. So one of those, Ofda in the Negev, you commanded. Now, later, you moved to Washington, D.C. as the air attache in the Israeli embassy, in the Israeli Defense Attache's office, and for a time you have been the acting defense attache. When you look at what is happening now at the Pentagon, what is happening now under President Trump and Secretary Hexet, what do you make of it? The turbulence, the disruption?
It's way behind my pay grade, but it seems to me that in those positions, it's a change or something unique. It's good, but it comes now, let's say, in the perfect storm. And for system and historically, it's kind of, I don't know what will be the outcome, but it looks that it's too much. Because America is America, we need to handle it as good as we can. And it's not an easy job, but
when you went to Washington, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs at the time, the one who retired, was an Air Force General Richard Myers, and he was succeeded by the vice chairman Peter Pace, who was a Marine general, but he only served for 2 years, and then came Admiral Mullen from the Navy. Now, when you compare the Israeli system of the IDF General Staff with the Air Force and Navy as branches under this general, who is a lieutenant general, the others being major generals or rear admirals, what do you make of it, of the American system?
The American system it's a different system than what we have in Israel, and I believe that this system is well suited to a kind of a superpower. And for Israel, that we are a tiny country, if you compare it to the US, that is the number one superpower. It's what we need. For example, we have 3 grades of general. They have 4, and also our chief of staff is the commanding of. Although if his Hebrew title is also not a commanding name.
Yeah, chief of staff.
Chief of staff, but he is the commanding of all the Israeli military, not army, military, army, Air Force, Navy. And the chairman in the US is not in a commanding position. So
right. He's an advisor.
He's an advisor for the president or for the secretary. There are many similarities, but there are still some differentiations that we live with them, okay, I believe.
But usually commanding generals of the Israeli Air Force have complained that the Air Force is like a stepchild to the Israeli general staff, because except for one general, Chalutz, who used to be the Air Force chief, they come from the army and they don't know a lot about the Air Force. Do you find it credible, this complaint?
I'm not sure that I agree with your assessments as they are complain.
Maybe it's good for them to be autonomous.
I don't know if it's good. Maybe it's good for this is what we have. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good. But you have to live with that. I believe also kind of the US Air Force commander is not his commander, the chairman. But
he has to train men and equip.
Exactly. And he is not a commanding of operational because it's totally different. So it looks, even in this war, that it works okay, it works good.
So basically, if the commanding general or the admiral in command of a territorial command, such as CENTCOM or
Pacific, whatever,
yeah, or EUCOM, if he is promoted by status to be the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, actually he loses power. He has more authority in his own domain in Europe or Asia or wherever than back in Washington, where he's the highest ranking officer, but he doesn't have a lot of control.
He doesn't have operational troops, but he whispered on the president ear. It's something. So it's important. And I think nobody says no to this job.
Yes,
because it's important.
Nobody turned it down yet. what's your view regarding the Israeli military performance in the Gaza war, which also broadened to Lebanon and then to Syria and Yemen and Iran? Did it meet your expectations, or did the disaster of October the 7th still overtake whatever successes we have seen later?
I think you put it very, very, very well. Because I would suggest that we differ between October 7th, and generally speaking,
later.
Later, exactly. October 7th was, I believe it was not an operational mishap. It was the understanding what is going to come.
Systemic failure.
Exactly. Or both intelligence and like what you said, and the operationals that was done since, let's say, October 10 or whatever the dates that we would like to put, up to date is, I would say, is very, very, very good. I think many in Israel surprised from the achievements that we have done, even regarding in all the Middle East.
But not the hostages. The hostages are still there.
No, the hostages. This is very right. This is very right. And, in October 7th, I would say that Yahya Sinwar won the war on 11 a.m. Whatever, 11 a.m.
It's still true, even though he himself is long gone.
It's true, and it's going to be I say it in Hebrew because I don't know the English. Tzaleket Tanachit, Bible scarf.
Scar, yeah.
Very deep one. And we live it forever. And it shouldn't happen to us because they did us kind of a 6-day war, the opposite way. They become, the quantity is quality, and although we are very big and they are very small, it was 5,000.
The few against many.
Exactly. And, but for your direct question, the performance of the military, both all Air Force, Army, Navy, I believe, were very, very good after the day.
Not many people realize, because for some reason, public relations is not the Air Force's best suit, that the Air Force had a major part in the Beeper operation against Hezbollah. Usually Mossad is getting credit, but there were others such as military intelligence and the Air Force.
But what is important is the outcome, not the credits.
So you see, this is exactly the humility, the modesty, that's which is, by the way, perhaps less apparent with fighter pilots, but with helicopter pilots.
I take it as a compliment.
Now, the Israeli Defense Forces apparently are better at offense than at defense, in spite of the name. And there were some fantastic offensive operations, but on defense, such as on October the 7th, the IDF has failed. You may also include non-military, but still security operations, such as safeguarding the country's leaders, the Rabin assassination. Even though many of the security personnel came from elite military units, they were better at devising attacks than defending against an attacker. Why is that?
You know, there is a nice expression that said that the best defense is to attack. And this is very true, because defense is hard. You need to understand the enemy view, what you would like to achieve.
The enemy has the initiative.
Exactly. And you can see in the history of wars, there are many defense collapse, kind of, let's say.
So you have to plan against the day, because you know that it is almost inevitable.
This is true, but it's a challenge. It's not an easy task. You can see in Pearl Harbor in December 1941, and in many other places.
You have been to Pearl Harbor, right? When you were a student, at Maxwell Air Force Base. You have gone to Pearl Harbor many years later, and the lesson is still burning there, isn't it?
Absolutely. I was there 2 times. One when I was in Maxwell Air Force Base in the Air War College in 1998, and second time was when I was served as the air attache and defense attache in Washington, D.C. in 2007, I think it was. And they are, it seems to me, and we were, although our delegation, many foreign officers, first time as lieutenant colonel and colonel, second time as attaches in Washington, D.C., that they are well prepared to Eastern attack from Western attack.
Not from Japan.
Not from Japan, from countries over there. I don't know what, but they are. We were briefed 2 times in 7 years between Air Force, Navy, Marines, and Army. All of them leave. Their mind is.
But you know, we in Israel, or perhaps the Jewish people, we also have such a saying: Masada shall never fall again. Metzada. Even though Metzada, the Romans are long gone and there is no risk of losing this hilltop, we took a vow that Metzada will not fall again. So Pearl Harbor too, apparently.
But you know, it's yes, we have Metzada not fall again, but Pearl Harbor, it looks to me that the U.S. are better than us, let's say, in
historical memory.
In historical memory, and in what is they have a very systematic kind of building military and alert, etc. They are. It looks. I don't know. I didn't check it.
It's a system.
It's a system that they have. Our system is less good.
Right. Then later they complain of not being out of the box, but at least they have this box.
Exactly. And they have certain things that they know what they need to do, what they need to be ready for, etc., etc.
General Avieli, what's your view of what is so-called here the judicial coup and the protests against it?
It's a very good question. I'm the one that going to the streets. In the very beginning, in January 2023, I was the first from the groups that participate in the groups that created the flag with the moat, with the stick, and we work like an industry, like a
the national.
Yes, in a garage in Ra'anana, and I think it's not the way that this government chose to do a reform, because it's a big reform that should have been done.
It didn't have a mandate. It didn't in the elections of late October or November 1st, 2022. They never asked for a mandate regarding that. So do you think they now should call for early elections?
It's a different question from the first question, but I think that they can do because they have the majority. Now they have 67.
But they don't want to. They're afraid to lose the election.
No, I don't speak about election, but I think that the right way to do this kind of reform, that I disagree about reform, but I'm not the one that can say what is right and not, should be with 80 Knesset members, something like that.
Out of 120?
Yes, at least.
And two-thirds or three-quarters?
Yes, and what they choose to do is, because we have the majority, we'll do whatever.
And Israel doesn't have a constitution.
And Israel doesn't have a constitution.
To limit it. Some of your friends and colleagues, the senior Air Force pilots, long without any obligation to serve, but usually volunteering to fill in, especially at Air Force headquarters, which is not less important than in the...
also many pilots like that.
So they chose to stop volunteering, not to refuse to serve, but to stop volunteering. in order to force the government to understand the significance of its decisions. You supported that.
I didn't stop, although I didn't do anything operationally. But I would say, I think it's, from my point of view, it's not a sarbanut. It's not a
refusal.
A formal refuse, because they are volunteering, and I would say that it's kind of personal decision, not a system decision. Although, there is a organization that's called the 555, and this view is very clear.
Triple nickel.
Nickel, exactly. And and let's say, I ask myself, if I was, let's say, in a position that I commanding
the Air Force?
pilots, or it's not only Air Force,
squadron.
Squadron. What should I do if someone say I'm stopping the volunteer? I think the decision should be, it's one-time decision.
Individual.
No, it's individual for sure. But if you decide that you stop, that's it.
There's no turning back.
There is no, I'm not in this position, but it seems to me.
But you have been one of the most senior officers during your time. You were a Brigadier-General, one of, let's say, 10 or 12 in the Air Force, when the Air Force chief himself was a Major General. The Chief of General Staff is a Lieutenant General. You were senior enough to go to your chief and ask him to go to his chain of command and tell them, this is serious. Please reconsider what you're doing to the country, because it has an impact on the force. Wasn't that what the current commander, Major General Ehud Barak, should have done when this judicial coup started? It doesn't seem as if he did it.
I don't know if he did it, but I believe that, I don't know, but of course he should say. And I believe that they said it even before, that those acts weakness our perception of the enemy.
Our perception in the eyes of the enemy.
Exactly. And so they did it, and it was very clear that it's like that. Because, let's say, I don't know the numbers of pilots or officers from the Army or Navy or intelligence that stop volunteer, but it for sure.
Now, the Israeli Air Force has a trajectory where in 1967 it was very successful. In 1970, the war of attrition, it drew in a way with the Soviets behind the Egyptians, and it did not end in a victory for Israel. And then in 1973, the Air Force suffered quite a blow. But in 1982, when you were already there, it had a success in Lebanon and so on and so forth. And the Syrian reactor, as well as the Iraqi reactor, were destroyed. Where does it stay now? Is it now in a low point or in a higher one?
It looks that in our current phase, I don't know where we are, especially specific right now, but in a very high volume of conflict. But it looks to me that we achieved in the last 18 months kind of a nice performance in the Middle East, that they are seeing us as strong, not only military-wise, as a social, החברה שלנו, society. And this is very important. And I think our leaders, our government should care about this parameter, because, and they would like to continue with these reforms that can weakness what we achieved. And it's important.
So the civil-military relationship is very important.
Civil-military, and the feeling of the each civilian, where we are and what we would like to achieve. And military success is not always success.
Operationally, yes.
It's not operational success. It's not always country success.
National success.
National success.
Because it is not military forces who wage war, but nations and societies in general.
You can see it President Sadat that I don't know if it's true, but he said that he went to the war in 73 to achieve peace. And military-wise, he lost, but he achieved his goal.
Reserve Brigadier-General Shmaya Avieli, thank you very much for this conversation. This has been Pine&Oak, the podcast, and we will be back quite shortly. For the time being, להתראות.
Thank you.